Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have Thunderstriker, a modern shoot 'em up done Game Boy style. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From publisher Gotcha Gotcha Games, Thunderstriker released for the Nintendo Switch in January of 2022. Now this title is super fascinating as it's part of this fictional Game Buddy series. So what's going on here is Gotcha Gotcha Games releases all these titles that are done on their platform, the Pixel Game Maker. It's basically this platform that allows you to design titles in a retro style. And they've got these titles that they're featuring that are done in this Game Boy aesthetic, and it's being released on this Retsuzan Game Buddy as this Retsuzan Game Buddy series. So right off the bat, I love the theme. There's already a platformer, a breakout title, a puzzle game, and now a shoot 'em up. In addition to that, this shoot 'em up is it's actually a really decent shoot 'em up. So if you like the idea of a retro style modern shoot 'em up done in the aesthetic of a Game Boy title, this is one that I can recommend for you without any hesitation at all. I've had a lot of fun with this title, and really I hope that they release more titles that are shoot 'em ups like this, although I wonder if that series might be coming to an end. Anyway, all that aside, here we find ourselves at the main menu. Before we dive into the game itself, I'm going to show you the option menu that's available for the game itself. Relatively bare bones, but you do have the ability to turn on this neat retro filter. It basically highlights all the pixels as if there was a really detailed on a screen. I don't remember my Game Boy experience being quite like that, but we'll leave it on for just a little bit so you can kind of see how it is in action. There's also this nice little user manual. The game is relatively simple, but it's still nice that this is present, so you can use that to learn how the game plays. We do have a couple other modes of play, basically practice, which lets you practice through one of the stages, and boss battle, which lets you practice a boss battle. Starting the game in normal mode, we're taken to the difficulty selection, easy, normal, mod. I like it how they ran out of space for all the characters there, and hard mode. So once we start the game, we see ourselves launching off of this neat carrier, and it just gives me the opportunity to talk a little bit about the aesthetic. So I really do enjoy the Game Boy art aesthetic. You'll have four colors to work with on this type of screen, and I remember hearing once from a pixel artist that I'm friends with that learning to design pixel art in four colors is like the Game Boy palette basically, is a really good place to start on your journey to becoming a pixel artist. As you don't have as much colors to work with, it really forces you to think about the look and what you're choosing for your various colors on your palette. So let's talk a little bit about the game itself. So this is your relatively standard vertical scrolling shoot 'em up done in the aesthetic aspect ratio of a Game Boy, with the color and the pixels as well. So we have a couple ways to attack. We have our main shot and we have a bomb. We'll save the bomb for situations where we specifically need it. You start the game with one beam, or shot rather, that we're using, and throughout the course of the game you'll be able to pick up letters like this. There are three letters: L for laser, H for homing, and V for Vulcan. Those are your sub-weapons. So in addition to that, we also have the ability to power up our main weapon, and everything can power up 5 levels, your sub-weapon and your main weapon. There are 2 versions of the main weapon. The one we've been using up to this point is the bullet, and then there's the laser. So it's a little bit hard to see the upgrade choice on that one. So the lighter option is the laser, the darker one is the bullet. And that's how you tell which one you're upgrading for your main shot. If you let the main shot sit long enough, then it will become a bomb, which is actually quite useful. We'll actually see that right here. So that's your main shot, that's powering up the laser, which is actually definitely the better choice for bosses, in my opinion. So now that we're to the end of stage 1, let's go ahead and turn that retro filter off, so you can see the game a little bit smoother. One thing that is kind of interesting about the life system is when you die in a lot of shoot 'em ups, the first stage boss is actually relatively simple, but the bosses do get more complex as you go. When you die, one thing that the game does is when you respawn, if you had any bombs still left in stock, those ones remain, and the new bombs you would have gotten, which count as 3, are added on top of your existing stock. It's actually a really generous system. It's also possible to stock up on the bombs once you've fully powered your weapon to level 5 by just letting the main weapon power up cycle to the bomb icon, being really generous. Although I must say the final boss in particular can get a little bit tricky, so it's nice to stock up on bosses, especially if you're able to make it through the game in a 1cc attempt. It will definitely make your final stage significantly easier. In addition to that, there is the challenge of finishing the game on all 3 difficulties. Upon finishing the game, it does hint that there's additional special stages that can be unlocked from completing that particular feat. At this point, I have not done so yet, so I'm not 100% certain what that is, but something to look forward to. And that's basically Thunderstriker served up for your enjoyment. So I gotta say, I absolutely love the aesthetic that the game presents. Having something designed as a Game Boy styled shoot 'em up, but with some little. The game actually really does kind of fit a lot of the design ideal of shoot 'em ups from that era. But there are also some modern, what I feel are modern touches. For one thing, rather than being reset to a checkpoint, which I feel would have definitely been the case back in the day, you spawn where you die. However, you do start a stage from scratch if you continue. That is something to note as far as the difficulty is concerned. The various cycling weapons. The difficulty levels, there are some elements that I feel do reflect a more modern design philosophy. In addition to that, though, I do feel that the gameplay itself really just has that nostalgic feel. There is a problem, though, that some of the stages, like this one in particular, just do drag on a little bit too long. There are 6 stages total in the game itself, and the last stage is actually a fair bit of a challenge, as it's kind of this big boss rush gauntlet where you're fighting all the 5 previous bosses as well as the stage 6 boss all in a row, and definitely the point of the game where I feel there's quite a bit of challenge introduced. So this is definitely a solid recommend for me. Let's talk a little bit about the minus flavors. So a couple things that I didn't necessarily, these are less problems of things I didn't like, but more ways that I feel the title could be improved. So the game itself controls pretty decently, but I would have appreciated the ability to map controls. Instead, they're fixed with the B button on the Switch controller being your shot and the A button being your bomb. I would have loved to have been able to make one of the triggers be our shot, but unfortunately the only other button aside from A, B, and the start button that does anything is the L button. In addition to that, having it be the original Game Boy colors is nice, but I would have really loved seeing the ability to use other filters and change up the colors, something kind of akin to what you could do with the Game Boy player that was available for the Super Nintendo. But then, as far as the plus flavors are concerned, so this isn't something that I touch on as often as I should, but One thing that I feel helps make a great shoot 'em up is having a great soundtrack. And I feel like this title nails the soundtrack, especially for the era, really, really well. The music fits like the gameplay kind of perfectly, and especially the era that the design is going for. It's there, like 100%. We also have some really great enemy design and boss design. As I mentioned, it's rather tricky to make things look good when you're only dealing with 4 colors. So having some great pixel art enemies and bosses is impressive, and the boss fights themselves are pretty decent considering what we're working with system-wise here. And then lastly, the biggest plus flavor I feel like this game has, they nailed the feeling of Game Boy shoot 'em up 100%. Through and through, they did an excellent job developing this title, and for that, I feel that this title is a solid recommend for me. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope your next week is wonderful, and we'll see you next time.